In this video, we are going to learn about profiles and permission sets and how to configure them and what are the use cases and advantages of using either. So to start with, I'm logged into Salesforce and I need to go into the profile section for which I need to navigate to setup. So simply hover onto the gear icon, click on setup. Once you're in setup, you can click on the quick find box and search for profiles. And there you go. Under users, click on profiles. Now by default, Salesforce gives you quite a lot of profiles that are added in your sandbox or your live environment by default. So as you can see over here, there are a lot of profiles right here, and each of these are for a different type of user license. Now the main user license that we use is the Salesforce license, because that's the license that allows a user to actually use Salesforce as a salesperson or just general CRM duties. For example, the system admin also needs to use a Salesforce user license. This one, the one that we're looking at. So as you can see, there are a lot of other licenses: Analytics Cloud, Authenticated Website. So all of these are for different use cases and for now not very relevant to what we're talking about. So we are going to scroll down. As you can see, we have a lot of profiles right here. So we have 41 in total, and we can see 1 to 25. So if you want to see all of them, you can either go to next page, or you can simply click here next to the arrow next to 41 and say display up to 100 records per page. That would make sure that you're able to see all 41 profiles on the same page without going back and forth previous and next pages. Now if you scroll down, you can see all these profiles. Now most of these down below are from the Salesforce license. So as you can see, read only, and then you can see solution manager and standard user, system administrator. So generally it is recommended that you should clone an existing profile instead of creating a fresh new profile. Now there are reasons why that is recommended. However, you can create your own new profile but from scratch. There is no limitation on doing it, but it is generally recommended to clone an existing profile and then edit it accordingly to what you need, what permissions you need to assign. Now for the purpose of this video, we will be creating a fresh new profile from scratch. So all you have to do is on your top left, just click on new profile, and from there you can also choose an existing profile to clone from. Now this is where Salesforce will sort of make you clone from an existing profile. You could have opened an existing profile and directly cloned it, but right now we're trying to create a fresh new profile. However, we still need to provide an existing profile to Salesforce saying that, okay, this is the one that we need to build from. So generally it is recommended to use the standard user profile because this profile has all the necessary permissions that a user should have in order to be able to use Salesforce effectively and efficiently. Now the standard user profile comes with all standard permissions, not too many and not too less either. So this is the perfect profile to clone from. And now you can name this one whatever you want. So I can call it custom profile sales. So that's what I'm going to call it. So you can call it anything that you'd like. There's no limitation on whatever you want to name it. Once you've named it, you can just hit save. And now your profile has been created. Now in order to actually make changes and edit it out, we simply click on this edit button right here. So you can feel free to add a description, so this would help anyone else if they come in and see all the profiles. They'll be able to read the description for this one and they'll know why it was created and what sort of permissions are being given in this without even opening the profile up. Anyway, so now when you scroll down, you can see the first section is for custom app settings. Now these are all the apps that currently exist in Salesforce, in our Salesforce instance, such as Analytics Studio, Bolt Solutions, Data Manager, Marketing, Sales, Chatter, Sample, Service, all those. For example, the app launcher on your top left, the 9 dots, when I click that, I can see that there are so many apps, and these are just a few of them. There are a lot more. When I search for sales, I can see 2. When I search for service, I can see a service and service console. Same for marketing. So does your user need to see all these apps? Generally, the answer is no, because a user doesn't need to see everything. An admin does, but a user only needs to see the apps that they are going to be working for. Now, in this case, I'm seeing marketing, sales, service, Bolt, solutions, data manager, all those things. Now, obviously, one individual is not going to need to do all those things. If this is the profile for a salesperson, then obviously the salesperson is not going to need to see the marketing CRM app or the service CRM app and the Bolt solutions and all that. So for them, we only assign them the apps that they are supposed to see, which is ideally going to be the sales app, or it could be a custom app that we created, and then we can just give a permission for that custom app. It would show up right here. For now, I'll just take away all of these app permissions because I don't suppose we need a salesperson profile to have access to all these apps. So the sales app is okay, both the sales app and chatter is also okay. Everything else we can just take away. And then here you can set which ones you want to keep as default. The default app is the one that the salesperson or the user is going to land on as soon as they log in. So that's going to be the default landing app for them. Now, as you scroll down, you can see connected apps. Now, if you have connected apps in your system, in your Salesforce, then you can provide permissions to those apps as well to this user, such as migration tool, data loader for partner, Salesforce for Outlook. Now, these are connected apps. So these are basically connected to another external tool other than Salesforce itself. So you can provide permissions to your user for these apps as well. Now, as you scroll further down, you can see tab settings. Now, tab settings is basically all the objects or all the tabs that you have in the system. You can choose which ones you want to hide, which ones you want to keep on, which ones you want to keep off until the user turns them on. So for example, accounts is a standard tab. It's been set as default on. You can either hide it, you can set it as default off. So generally, you either turn it on or you just hide it. Tab hidden means that the user will no longer be able to see that tab anywhere. They will not be able to search it directly on the app launcher. For example, I can search accounts right now, so the tab will show up. But if I were to set it as hidden, the user would not be able to do that. So you can do this for every single tab in your system, both standard and custom. It is important to note that if you hide a tab, for example, if I hide the accounts tab, the user will still be able to see account related data if they run a report or through another related object. So the data will not be hidden. It's just the tab that will be hidden from the user. So if I were to go back to the home page here, you can see these are tabs. So this is my account tab. When I go here, I can see that I have some level of data here. And if I were to hide the tab, the user would not be able to come here, not be able to come on this screen. So they wouldn't be able to see this data easily. But if they did want to see it, they could create a report or go into a related object and look for this data from there. Coming back, now if you scroll down, now this is the section for administrative permissions. Now these are a lot of permissions that a user basically needs in order to just use the CRM for its necessary functionalities. You can see like access conversion entries, API enabled, create list views, create and customized reports. So this is where the real advantage of cloning an existing profile comes in. So when you actually clone a standard user profile, you can see that Salesforce has already given all the necessary check permissions that it thinks that Salesforce believes a user needs to have in order to do their day-to-day job. So for us, this makes our lives easy. Now you don't need to really worry about providing the necessary permissions. Instead, you only need to provide your extra permissions on top of what's already given. Now you can read through all of these, such as manage public list views, manage Salesforce knowledge. Now that's a service-related feature. Or manage users. Do you want this salesperson to be able to manage users, like create users or remove users? No, of course not. I don't want them to do that. Plus you have this little help text next to most of these, so you can simply hover onto it and you can read the description. That will also help you out. So these are like over 100 permissions here, so you can go through them. You can decide which ones you want to assign, which ones you don't. but just so you know that the ones that are already assigned are enough for the user to at least be able to use Salesforce effectively. And next section is general user permissions. So now these are these are not administrative permissions as you saw above, but these are also permissions that a user in some cases may or may not need in order to do their jobs in Salesforce. So again, the ones that are necessary are assigned. The other ones you can obviously go through and decide if you want to assign, such as manage leads. Do you want this individual to be able to create, edit, and manage all the leads, manage the multi-factor authentication, and merge topics? That's also another Service Cloud related feature. Report builder, do you want this user to run flows? All these permissions you can decide which ones to assign or which ones you don't want to assign, such as I want to waive the multi-factor authentication for this user, so I can simply check this box. So now when this user tries to log in, or when a user with this profile tries to log in, they will not have to do the multi-factor authentication from their phone. Also remember that a profile can be assigned to as many number of users. I'm creating this profile, and then this profile can be assigned to more than one user. It's not just for one individual. And right here, the last section, this is important. This is where you decide your permissions, or the permissions that a user with this profile should have for each object. Now right here we have accounts. We can see read, create, edit, delete, and then view all and modify all. So basic access is read, create, edit, delete. So for accounts, we want this user to be able to read, meaning we want them to see or view accounts. We want them to create accounts. We want them to be able to edit and delete accounts. Okay, that looks fair. Now you can do the exact same thing for every single object in the system. The objects that you're using, of course, the other ones you don't really need to worry about. But view all and modify all, now what do those mean? So now if you give view all permission for any object, that means a user with this profile will be able to view every single account. Now since I've given view all permission for accounts, this user will be able to see every single account in the system, regardless of whatever the other security setting is, regardless of what their role is or what permission sets they have or whatever else. If they own or they created the account, doesn't matter. They will be now able to see every single account, but they'll only be able to view it. If I say modify all, now this means this user has full permissions across the account object. They can view, modify, edit, delete. They can basically do anything with any accounts in the CRM now. So modify all and view all are administrative permissions which are not to be given lightly. So this applies to all objects in the system, both standard and custom. The same permissions apply. So these are all your objects. You can choose and decide which ones you want to give certain permissions for. These are our custom objects. You can decide which ones you want. For example, our student, I want to give read, create, edit, and delete permission for the salesperson. And then as you scroll down, you have session settings and password policies. Password policies, there is a global password policies in Salesforce where you can do your settings, and you can override those settings by changing them here, and it'll only apply to this the individuals that have this profile assigned. We are going to look at global password policies shortly. So that's how you set up a whole profile, and then at the end you can hit save. And there you go. So your profile is now saved. Now if you look at permission sets are very similar. They're basically an extension to profile. So profile is mandatory to assign to an individual. With permission sets, it's optional. So basically permission sets is used when all the permissions that you wanted to give, you've given through a profile. But now if you need any extra permissions, if the same profile is being shared across 5 people and you only need to give extra permissions to one of them, so then you're not going to change the profile, because changing the profile would apply to all 5 people. So in that case, you usually simply create a permission set and assign that permission set to one individual. Now how does that look like? Simply search for permission sets on your quick find box. And you can see that we already have a lot of permission sets that are created in the system by default. In this case, we will simply go ahead and create new permission set. And we're going to give it a label. So I'm going to say custom student permission set. So in this permission set, I am going to assign modify all permission to this permission set, and then I'll assign this permission set to a user. And once I do that, that user will have modify all access to the student object. So give your label, leave everything as is, click save. All right, now basically the sections that we had in profile, these are the same sections here in permission sets. So assigned apps, the first section we had in profile, remember, assigned apps, where we chose which apps the user should be able to see. If I click on this, and if I click edit, so the interface is a little different, but the permissions are exactly the same both in profiles and in the permission sets. So these are all the available apps that we also saw in profiles. Now you can choose which ones you want to enable. So if you've already enabled anything in profile, you don't need to enable it again in a permission set, because that already applies. Now you don't need to do it again. So if you've given a permission or made something visible through a profile, you don't need to do it again using a permission set. However, if you haven't given any permission yet on the profile level, so you can use the permission set to give that extra permission. So for example, in this case, I had only given the permission for sales and the Salesforce chatter apps on that profile, the custom profile that we created. So now I also want to give service related permission to a specific individual who has that profile assigned. So this is what I'll do, and I'll simply save it. All right, so I've given app permissions on this permission set. I can go back by clicking on permission set overview. And the same thing applies. You have assigned connected apps. So remember, the second section that we had in profile was assigned apps, connected apps. So that's exactly what this is. And object settings, now that's the main thing. So when you click on object settings, you can also read the descriptions for each. So this one has permissions to access objects and fields in settings such as tab availability. So you can simply click on the object settings. And over here, you can see all objects that exist in the CRM. In our case, we will look for the student object. There it is. So we will click on the student object. And we can see that, so on the permission set, you will see that there is no permission enabled. Of course, you've already enabled this in the profile, so it won't reflect here. You can only give extra permissions in a permission set. Anything that already exists in the profile, you cannot take that away. So you click edit here. And I'm going to give modify all permissions here. So once you select modify all other checkboxes also get selected except for create. So in this case, I will just select create as well. Tab, I want to make that available. So I'm going to say available and visible. And then we have all these fields that exist on the object itself. By default, when we create a field, we choose what permissions we wish to give for this field, which profile. So generally, when we were creating fields, we just assigned them to all profiles, so everyone already has permissions to them. But in case they didn't, this is where you can choose. So I'm giving edit access to all the fields. So you can do that by just tapping on the edit access checkbox on the top for the student object. And then we can hit save. Done. And then we can go back to object settings, or we can directly go to the permission set overview, which we will do in this case. And then we have app permissions, and then we have Apex related permissions, Visualforce related permissions, Flow related permissions. So everything that we saw under administrative permissions and general permissions in our profile, all those checkboxes, the hundreds of checkboxes, those checkboxes are divided in multiple sections over here. And you can go into each one of them and you'll see a number of checkboxes, and you can provide the same exact permissions. Such as if I scroll all the way down, I can see system permissions at the end. So if I open system permissions, I'll see all the checkboxes, not all of them, but some of the checkboxes that we had in the administrative permission section on the profile. So you can see them here. There might be a few more here that were not part of the profile. So permission sets have a little or a few more additional permissions on them that are not available in the profile. So, it's generally good to use permission sets for any additional level of permission that you wish to assign. you have all of them, manage billing and manage encryption keys. These are sort of advanced, of course. Manage list views, merge topics. We saw that one in profiles. Multi-factor authentication. We also saw that one. We keep scrolling down. We have Wave multi-factor authentication for exempt users. We actually assigned this one on the profile. So you can check whichever one you want to check. But before that, you have to actually click edit. So in this case, I'm just gonna check this box, the access activities. So you can check as many as you'd like, and then you can hit save. And there you go. Now you can assign this permission set to individuals. So this done everything that I wanted to do, I've done with this permission set. Now if I want to assign it to someone, simply click on manage assignments, add assignment, and you will see a list of all users in the system, and then you can choose which ones you want to assign this to. So obviously you can only assign it to active users, or you're only supposed to assign it to active users. I will assign it to Laura for now. And I will say next. You can also select an expiration date that, okay, this permission set should only stay with Laura for, number of days or weeks or any, time interval. So you can choose that. It's up to you. If you just want it to be assigned indefinitely, then just say no expiration date. Say assign. So you can assign to as many individuals. I just assigned to Laura, but you can assign to any number of individuals that you like. So that's how you configure profiles and permission sets in Salesforce.